Auschwitz and all the other concentration camps in around Europe. So the local government and city has a huge asset of knowledge about the history uh, and you know unbelievable size of this of the Shoah and of this human catastrophe. This is some kind of reason why we are trying to transfer and translate this knowledge for the Iranian audience to understand. During our study, we found out that really anti-Semitism in Iran is the biggest part is a modern phenomenon. The first, actually, Jews lived in Iran since 2,700 years. So compared to the living of the Jews in Germany, it is 3,000 or 2,000 years more. So the Jews lived in Iran, and during they lived in Iran, we were once Zoroastrian, then we changed our religion, or we
Narrow
had
Creek.
been forced to
Over
change our
request for
religion
federal U.S.
to
Attorney Andrew
Islam,
Butchers to
Sunni
suspend the
Islam,
safety act to
and
bring
they
suit against the
we
state of
have a
Illinois,
majority of
Democrat
Iranian
leadership
has
Christian
been
Brandon
forced to change
Island
the
that
religion to
forced the U.S.
Shiite,
Supreme Court to
so they
determine the
have been witness
constitutionality of the safety act.
of changing our or the countrymen's religion during thousands of years. So there were historical roots and family marriages between the people who were once Zoroastrian. Nowadays, it happened that they are Shiite. So, but in their soul, we are sure. Me myself, my parents are rooted in Hamadan, the city of Esther, and Mordechai in the city of Purim. So we have, of course, a lot of Jewish people in our roots, in our family in the past centuries. So we Iranian lived with the Jewish people in more than friendship and harmony, but the phenomenon of the Tsar in
Yeah.
Russian
Okay.
Empire rooted anti-Semitism came to Iran with this massive fake book of the Protocol of the Wise of the Zion. It was a propaganda book that sometimes, sadly, is still discussed in some
Came out of Russia originally.
Exactly. This is the first wave of anti-Semitism in Iran in the modern history. Cities of Tabriz, Urumiyeh, Hamadan, Kermanshah, their elites, those who could, the sons of, or the people who could send the sons and daughters to study foreign languages, they came to touch with that madness book. And then the second wave is the German-rooted anti-Semitism that was huge. The German came to Iran and told them fairy tales like we are Aryan people. At the same time, we found out here in concentration camp of Buchenwald, Samuel Hushmand, Iranian doctor who has had his um, um, practice in Frankfurt am Main, was captured and killed and murdered in Buchenwald. Two other Iranian people, we have found out their names and we have every information about them. And we are studying about it and translating the information for the Iranian audience, and open online information. So just want to land my point. The third wave is the socialist made, pro-Palestine made anti-Semitism. Of course, we had also, and we have Islamic rooted, deeply Islamic, and in the Sunni tradition existing anti-Semitism. So we have then four different problems we have to face. What I think with that, I want to land my point. I think the Iranian people are, compared to the development of the other parts of the world, Iranian are thinking exactly in the other way. We want and we love to reduce tensions with the Jewish people. We slowly are studying the roots of madness in Europe, you understand that the Jewish people has been once took hostage by the Romans and took in chains to Europe and the Roman Empire. And now, after all this pogroms, and all this, what they have seen in Spain, in Great Britain, in Germany, in Ukraine, in Poland, they have found back to their roots, to our neighborhoods, to Shalim, to the Holy Land. I would be happy and I would work for us to live in harmony, all the people of this Abrahamic religions to live together. Other solution, there ain't no other solution. Either we live all in peace together in harmony and let the Jewish people be back again in their roots, because me, honestly, I have to say that if I were a Jew, I couldn't count of the mercy of the British people to let them live there, or the mercy of the German people to live there another time. Germany, for them to trust Germany, that no, never ever will happen. That stuff. So it is necessary for them to have their own country. We haven't understood that modern phenomenon 70, 80 years now. I think that is the time that we learn to live in harmony with our Jewish neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to kind of reset the room a little bit and go back to what's going on in London today, in addition to what we've already discussed. A yeshiva in London today, we do not know the cause at this point, but there was a major fire there. I want to, not that they're listening, but if they were to be listening, I just feel compelled to publicly thank the fire brigade there in London, because they immediately ran into that religious school and removed the Torah scrolls to turn it over to the leaders of the community, save the scrolls. That's the first thing they did. So, thank you to the firefighters of London. There's just so much going on there. The Prime Minister went to the area of the stabbing and was called a traitor. He was heckled because he went to show support for the Jewish community. You're a traitor, Mr. Prime Minister. There were people today driving down the roadway in London, waving Palestinian flags, and they were shouting, F the Jews, rape their daughters. F the Jews, rape their daughters. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So they feel unencumbered now. They feel like they have the right to go and do these kinds of things. And maybe they do. I don't know what the law is in the Kingdom. I think they have similar free speech guarantees as we do in the United States. If you want to scream insults at the Prime Minister for supporting the Jews, I guess you can. It's just that, if some Muslims were attacked for their religion, God forbid, and the Prime Minister went out to show support for them, would people be calling him a traitor for supporting a community within his nation that came under attack? I really would hope not. Thank you for that, Perusian. We'll go to Agent, followed by our Maze.
Gary, thank you for having me. I think, zooming out a bit, there's a few things to say here, but I keep being reminded of this term that I think political system where the state fails to enforce basic laws against criminals, while simultaneously over-regulating and punishing law-abiding citizens. The other day, for instance, I was in California and my car was broken into. All of my things were stolen, my IDs, my computers, a huge amount of my life, my work computers, everything. I could even see a lot of it moving on the air tags and stuff, but the local defunded police agency is in a highly defensive posture. They said when all the things were settled and whatever, they could maybe send a police escort for me to go and confront my if I could go collect my things, and they maybe send someone to accompany me.
Okay, so what does that have to do with today's? I'm
Well,
sure there's a
It
correlation.
does relate. I mean, it's just top of mind for me. I'm not trying to make it about me and my situation, but I think it relates to this concept that we are not focusing on the basic things that are going to keep people safe in society. People are more concerned with defending the status of, they're more concerned with not offending people by public officials, for instance, or by people with high status in society, rather than actually protecting the citizens and the population. And I think Jews, as many people talked about earlier, become a particular target for hate and for just victimization from a lot of different people. And at the same time, we live in the West is increasingly moving towards low trust society. If people are familiar with that concept, it moved from a high trust to a low trust. So it used to be you could walk down the street, you could park on the street, you could do things, and you could go to synagogue and you wouldn't be attacked by your neighbors. But if we have these open societies where we explicitly, the government, the narco-tyrannic government explicitly has policies that, in order not to appear bigoted in any way, or maybe even worse, to try to undo the wrongs of whatever some injustices they imagine. Well, we're going to let in people en masse, and maybe even not in an orderly and legal way, that we know, if we actually are honest with ourselves, and they tell us very openly that they will explicitly target people like Jews, and they want to wipe Jews out, and Jews are their enemy, back to their holy books and everything. But no, that would be wrong to treat people, to collectively judge, millions of people entering from different parts of the world by those types of standards. That would be contrary to the liberal values of individualism and freedom and equality and all these things. So of course we would not take that into account. And we treat everyone, and then when the synagogues get attacked, and when Jews are murdered in the streets and so forth, it's like, oh, this is terrible. Oh, anti-Semitic. We won't even say who's doing it, because that would be wrong to name, people by a group. But it's just, we'll just
Who's doing it?
We'll overgeneralize it to the whole population, and just say, oh, anti-Semitism.
Well, yeah, but that's because both sides of the aisle have a problem with it. The left's got a problem with it, and the far right has a problem with it. It's both ends.
To me, that's not.
It's both ends of our
certainly not
society.
part of that, Marshall. I can guarantee you, I am not part of those groups.
Bro, I'm a moderate Republican, and I'm not part of that stat. My point was it infects both sides. It's a hatred that's universal.
I don't know. It's not universal. It's not universal, Marshall. It's not universal. Thank you. I'm done speaking.
You may think that. My experience in the Republican Party tells me we have just as big a problem with it among. You're welcome to think what you like, but trying to make it one political side over the other doesn't really do the job.
What about in England, Marshall?
In England, I don't know whether it's one side or not. From talking to my English friends, I get the feeling that a lot of them are Palestinian supporting. I don't get.
Map on your political party thing onto this, and I'm not even talking about political parties.
Okay, thank you, Marshall and Agent. We'll go to Armaze, followed by Les.
Thank you, Gary. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. This is really sad. I don't like to hear that kind of stuff where Jewish people or any other group is being attacked, right? Or the threats of attack. Um, I'm always making references to Mexico, and we have a huge community, a Jewish community here in Mexico City, and we don't have problems like that. We have Claudia Sheinbaum, right? And Gary earlier was talking about how Jewish attorneys were protecting Black Americans when no one else would protect them. Maybe it's time for the Jewish community and the Latino community or Hispanic community, in particular the Mexicans, that we unite, that we come together. Thank you for the mic, Gary.
Well, I did my part. I married a Mexican woman. If that helps you with your project here, Hermes. Les versus Les, followed by Andrew.
So anti-Semitism coming from the Middle East is as old as Islam. Muhammad wiped out large swaths of Jews in Arabia because they didn't accept his religion, and that continued. The Grand Imam of Jerusalem during World War II met with Adolf Hitler and asked that they deport the Jews, and Hitler was not ready to take them. He said in due time, but they were raring to go. And if these guys in Britain don't want to live among British Jews, maybe they should leave Britain. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. Andrew, you're up.
Hey, Gary, thanks for bringing me up. Yeah, I would say, there's a variety of things that are contributing to this. Of course, we know social media is. And I really think that is accelerating this anti-Semitism because it reaches so many people so fast. So it is my opinion that if this isn't indeed an emergency, as you suggest, and as I think you're correct, that these media companies, these social media companies, these technology companies are held to a high standard above which they are not being held now, both in terms of regulation as well as in terms of prosecution. Because it is on their platform that these things are being done. We have a tool that they are cramming down our throats as the savior of mankind, and that is called AI. Certainly this tool can be trained and is being trained in some regions to spot anti-Semitic tropes, to spot code words, to spot the context of a sentence, of something that somebody's saying. So we have the tools available. Also the algorithms, they should be made more public so that we can understand exactly, is this driving people to other information that is similar in order to keep them on that platform? So all of these things, I think, have to be taken into consideration. And I think the final thing is education, and that has to start in school. I don't remember if I ever had any Holocaust education. They're now doing that in Alberta and Saskatchewan as mandatory courses. I just saw today, actually, which I think is a good thing. My introduction to this came at a little local store in Calgary where we would go, discount store. My mom would buy clothes and stuff there. And the proprietors were a Jewish couple from Eastern Europe. You could tell by their accent. They were heavily accented. Lovely people, lovely man. And he showed me his number. I didn't really understand then, I was maybe 12. I didn't really understand the significance of it, but it always stuck with me. And I then went on to find out myself. So that experience really hit me hard. And why would somebody have a tattoo on them? So a number tattoo. So I think that education has to be a critical element towards all this. All these things have to be taken into in together and used as remedies. It'll never go away. We were just talking about it, how long this has been around. There's always people out there that have these vile attitudes. But if we can at least curtail the spread of it so easily without any responsibility for these companies, I think that's a good first step. Thank you, Gary.
So there's no way that these social media companies are going to be able to police every little thing that's put onto their programs. However, they operate on this philosophy of birds of a feather stick together. And so if I am a photography buff, as I am, and I look on any social media site at postings by photographers or about photography, I will suddenly have driven to me, this is getting to your algorithm point, Andrew, I will suddenly be driven to all of these postings about photography. I won't see postings on other things that I might also be interested in because I haven't, quote, told, close quote, the social media site that I was interested in these other topics. So they can use the algorithms to dispel some of the support system that they are accommodating for hatred. They could adjust their algorithms so that if a person is spewing out the kind of hatred that I documented in my piece that's linked above, the gas chamber statement, is not seen by other people who also have anti-Semitic views so they don't get ginned up. It's sort of like pedophilia. I think they try their best to suppress pedophilia on their programs, and they make it difficult, I think. I don't know, because this is not one of my interests, thank God, but my impression anyway is, and I stand to be corrected, that they make it difficult for the pedophilias to find others whose commentary would make them feel that their proclivities are normalized. So I think you're onto something here, and I would tell you that given the amount of legal duress companies like Meta are under right now with these lawsuits about these AI companions and how they might affect the minds of the developing minds of children, negatively, obviously. That if I were the head of one of these major social media programs, I would tell my extremely talented staff of developers to develop algorithms that dissuade people from sharing their views of hatred with other people who have similar proclivities. What do you think about that, Andrew? Do you think that's possible?
I think they have the tools. What they need is the will, and they've forever been. Oh, it's not us. It's we're just the platform. We're not responsible for what's said on it. But we know that that's a lie. That's not true. If I host a party full of Nazi sympathizers, then or they just come. Well, I'm still I want to get them out of there. But just to your point, Sam Altman is now being sued by residents of Tumbler Ridge after that shooting in British Columbia because of their inaction. And I think this is what needs to happen. They need to be held accountable. They need to be hit in the pocket. And in large sums, too, because these people are making billions. And Grok, I mean, Elon Musk just refused to go to France for questioning because of what his AI platform had produced in terms of pedophilia and weird, or not weird, but sexual content. So, yeah, they need to be held accountable. Sorry, that's the way I feel.
Yeah.
They have the tools. They have the technology. It's like the $6 million man. Come on.
So the reason they have these algorithms the way they do is to try to get you addicted to the program, so that when I go onto Threads or onto X or onto Facebook or onto YouTube, whatever it is that it thinks that I'm interested in, I'm going to get. So I get my shot of dopamine, if you look back to the history of all this, to the history of Facebook, it was originally established so that a bunch of friends at a college, at a university, could keep in touch with one another. And then it expanded into a global community where we could keep in touch with our friends. And if you're an earlier user of Facebook, you will recall that on your timelines, you would see what your friends are doing. What's Scott up to today? What's Howard up to today? What's Austin doing? Because they're my friends on Facebook, and they're posting things that are important to them, and maybe things that are happening in their lives. Austin got a new job. He posts it so all of his friends can see it. He's not posting it so that strangers can see it. Why do strangers give a damn whether Austin got a new job? And so that's how their algorithms once worked. We were using Facebook to keep in touch with our friends. Now all these people who they call Facebook friends are people we've never met, and we are grouped with them based on interests, not based on friendships, because that keeps us coming back, and that makes their program more valuable. That's why they do it.
Yeah, so I think with the education, the digital literacy, that's also a key element for young people to learn how to use this technology, learn the pitfalls in this technology, learn to recognize misinformation, etc. It's hard for me to know what's misinformation, just by quote unquote looking at it, which I can't do. But I know it's out there, so I'm suspect. But you need to have that kind of suspect when you're on the internet. I remember my sister when she got on the internet. The first thing I told her is that, first off, it'll teach you how to use it. Secondly, don't believe anything you see on it. And if you go into these chat rooms, most of them are not going to be good chat rooms. They're going to be on subjects that you're not going to like. So you've got to be aware, and you've got to be discerning.
I hope the Critical Thinking Forum is the exception, Andrew.
So far, it's okay.
Thank you, Andrew. Austin, followed by David.
Hey, thank you, Gary. Thank you for hosting this room. Is my microphone working well? It says I'm having some connection.
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
All right, perfect. Yeah, the first thing I wanted to say about joining the stage dimension, like, the greatest generation really is the greatest generation amongst British people who lived through the mid-century and the early part of the 20th century. And I'm an elder millennial, folks who had a lot of contact with the greatest generation. I think a lot of British identity was around, we defeated the Nazis. And I imagine so many of these greatest generation would be rolling in their grave. Imagine the bombing of London, and they're seeing Nazi ideology circulate and be embraced by terrorists. It's utterly obscene. And then age when there was the mention of social media, we're dealing with a serious enemy and a seriously organized enemy. I was very young when 9/11 happened. I remember it, and I remember the changes, and I remember some of the harshness with having to remove my shoes to go through airplanes, and all this was established. How the hell did we forget this? Because the science of social media virality and the science of influence, it's not some dark art. You could learn it in like a 201, 301 class without a lot of marketing courses. This is accessible to so many people. We've had terrorist groups spreading misinformation, disinformation, and psychological warfare. And this is a very serious issue, and it's a true issue. Every clubhouse I'm friends with has heard that the Islamic Republic, Islam fascist nation, is putting together TikTok videos with Legos to create propaganda. Think about it. Legos. It's just utterly obscene. We're not taking it seriously, and we have the science to take care of it. And I must say, I'm really glad that King Charles is in charge. I was there, as you mentioned, Gary, I'm so glad I sent you that link a while ago. He is an exceptional monarch. He's probably in the top 1 percentile of monarchs throughout history. That speech he gave to Congress was magnificent, and it's interesting to have a king who became a king at old age.
And you know what? You want to know something? It was a diplomatic speech, and he's not a comedian, but unlike Jimmy Kimmel, he made me laugh.
Yeah, truly brilliant. I mean, it's so interesting that his coronation was around the retirement age of most people, but he's just accumulated so much wisdom. He's very in touch with the norms of the greatest generation, and he knows what it means to be British. And he embraces modernism to a good degree. And it's just absolutely terrible. Like, just confusion and irony. Like, throughout the history of Palestine was a European colonial endeavor. And to see the irony of people so unlearned, so biblically illiterate, that they can't look at a map and see the Hebrew words of the ancient cities, or the ancient cities that were from Hebrew language and became Islamicized during various caliphates. It just boggles my mind. But again, I guess it's a theme that keeps coming up. We're living a pick-your-own-adventure book. We need to talk to our friends. We need to speak with the downtrodden and confused. And we need to elect leaders that are truly leaders and truly care about people. And I love London, and I love grad school, and this is just deeply disturbing. Really brought me down to see what happened with all the attacks on universities. I want to get more degrees very soon, and part of delaying was definitely that spring of hatred that popped up. And it's just so strange. Like I said, like, what happened? We developed all these plans during 9/11. Are there these contingency plans that were drafted then, and then someone just threw away the paper files, what to do if there's co-option or psychological information, disinformation, propaganda of terrorist groups? These are very concerning things. And I miss London being, I mean, I'm sure London's still fabulous for the most part, but it's such a cosmopolitan city. And higher education, what I loved about it is how collegial it was and how we came together as a community. And I hope I'll find that again. I'd be really disappointed. These days I'm really cognizant of my Ashkenazi roots and more connected with the spirituality. I'll be be really disappointed. I cringe every time I see headlines of anti-Semitism on campus. It's antithetical to the purpose of a learned society. We need to avoid illiberalism and how it's scapegoating. We need to choose good leaders, and we need to make an impact locally. And I don't know how to address trolls and stuff, but there's some of us that are very learned in the psychological sciences and marketing science. Maybe there needs to be like a service corps of public relations professionals, because I don't know what's happened with the PR, the public relations world perception of Israel. It's an ancient nation.
So, Austin, you mentioned your dismay about the denigration or the degrading of a lot of things and places in society. You mentioned London in particular, as we have throughout our discussion here today. I have a friend, she's a university dean, and she and her husband and their preschool son went on a trip to London with great anticipation of having a wonderful time, and came back feeling that they were nervous the entire time they were there because of the atmosphere of the city. And they subsequently didn't have the time that they had anticipated when they went. So I don't know. I'm not there. I haven't visited London. I don't know what the situation is there. I haven't talked to her in depth about it. But she said that to me. So I know that's anecdotal, but they didn't feel comfortable in London. I don't know whether anybody ever said anything to them or anything like that, but whether there were nuanced things going on, but they just did not feel comfortable.
I imagine the graffiti and dumb posters from dumb kids that are illiterate about history. It's just unfortunate. And, I think King Charles will try to do something about it, and I hope the future of the monarchy embraces this wisdom that we saw with Charles and Elizabeth.
Well, I will tell you, and it's not supposed to come from the king and the queen, Camellia, but it's supposed to come from the elected government, and the elected government is starting to get it. The prime minister went to the location of the attack. He came under duress for doing so. Well, maybe that comes with the territory of being prime minister. You have to open yourself up to that. And the various offices, they're quoted in my story above. They're taking this very seriously, what's going on there. And I don't know that we in the United States have caught up with the British government's understanding, our government that is, of how serious a problem it is right now. And maybe they will serve as an example to the United States. I hope so. Thank you, Oscar. We'll go to David, followed by Hulk.
Yeah, another sobering topic, Gary, unfortunately. There's so many issues that are raining down on the outcome of what we've seen in London and here in America. I enjoyed your article, although I didn't enjoy the content. I enjoyed the way you wrote it and documented it. But there's a lot of hate in the world, Gary. There's a lot of hate that's being disseminated, and it comes from all sorts of sources, parts of the world, and folks are aggrieved, or they feel backs against the wall, or they don't like what they're seeing. They want to blame somebody. They want to blame something. They want to attack, and they want to lash out. And a lot of times that is irrational, it's guttural, it's visceral, and it impacts minorities, impacts the weakest in society, or the most vulnerably exposed to what it is they're perceiving as being the cause of the pain that they're seeing in the world today. I mean, God forbid, Gary, that this United States would produce such smart and sophisticated or these educated children that's had to score well on these SATs and write these commanding essays to best their peers to get into these universities to only then, as you put it, adopt these anti-Semitic positions against Jews or their fellow Jewish classmates in a rabid form of response to what they're seeing play out in the Middle East. But transpose that to a radical in London, somebody that's raised in a poor area of London and under theocratic strictures and not even really enjoy the West or have the opportunities that the West provides. And then that person, I'm making the argument that a lot of the terrorism that London and the UK and other parts of Europe have experienced has been homegrown terrorism by actual residents born in those countries. They're not from another part of the world coming to London per se, although there are examples of that. But they're people who grew up with these ideas toward the West and toward the very country that they're allowed to live in and have these freedoms. And so, we want answers, we want remedies, we want solutions for the problems, the pain, and the stuff that we're involved with as a government, and particularly when there's military, about this long war, and the genesis of all these issues. And we can pinpoint that the oil and the control of that from the very get-go is a byproduct of the geopolitics that continue to haunt us today, and particularly with regards to terrorism and violence, and obviously anti-Semitism, which has somehow been married with the whole international issues that we face in the Middle East. But as you said, Gary, anti-Semitism has been around forever. And what would we use as an excuse for what ails us as a society if Jews didn't exist? Who would we blame? There would be somebody else. There would be some other culture. There would be, and of course, Gary, I want to just, again, we have a stage here. We have limited time. Other people want to speak. It's very hard to parse these massive issues out here on the stage. But for the most part, I think at the end of the day, the United States, Britain, the West, we need to do a better job of reminding. What's going to do? Should we have a Holocaust museum in every city? And should we invest in that? Should we invest in that in Europe? Do we not do that post World War II? It used to be able to happen in the West. But with that, need that to be the responsibility of we feel that there are free policies that we back in the Middle East, living properly, or settled properly. That would then stop them from doing what they're doing. Gary, it's mind-boggling to think how we solve the problem, and how do we get to it. Abby's on the stage and she's articulated the time and the energy committed to sourcing out the roots of all this. We got better things to do in our life than to protect ourselves, to spend money in our holy places in America and around the world, which are bastions of spirituality, peace, and why we exist as humans. Because of the target of responsibility that everybody else. So, and the social media, let's leave there in terms of the technology piece that is leveraged by the hate, by the monetization of that, and the ubiquity of how people access and imagery and ideas. anti-Semitism and how to basically check all that. You know, I know war is war, Gary. There's a lot of winners and losers with that, and unfortunately, in today's America, in today's world, there's going to be a pullback with regard to whatever we decide to do. In the Middle East, the Jewish interests, the Israeli interests there, to keep them safe and to keep the Jews safe, as well as the minorities. We just had the Supreme Court, and I don't want to commit too much, tell minorities in this country that your vote, your political communities may not produce the candidates you want to vote for. So I think those are battles for and that can somehow be married as well with how the user impact as well, because they are part of that tradition of having to fight for their rights in the country. So I think if we wrote rights there, then we got to not necessarily support rights over here. So I think the whole nation has to somehow get its arms around how we are too involved in politics and stuff, but you know, a lot of that is also playing out in a way that I've never seen before in this country. And I saw an interesting piece I wanted to post in the chat. It's comparing the 8 years of Obama to the almost 7.5, 6 years of Trump now. And the disparity in these types of scenarios that have played out on national stage, the comparison is mind-boggling in terms of where the country's at today. So Gary, I just reiterate, I know the country, has changed. It's anecdotal, but when I was last in London in 2015, I was visiting a British friend of mine, going to a wedding. I didn't see anybody, and I wasn't walking on the street. We were walking through this Hyde Park area, March, exactly what I'm talking about. And we couldn't find a proper British breakfast. We couldn't find restaurants that catered to do that. It got gentrified in a more Muslim direction. And I was walking sort of in the path of the parking and the road, and I was a couple feet off from the sidewalk. And my Kiwi buddy goes, "Hey, mate, get over here on the sidewalk." And I go, "What are you talking about? What are you worried about?" He goes, they might run you over. And I go, "Is that rational? Or is it Westerners?" So, you know, this is the fear that's out there, Gary. This is the stuff that is haunting, you know, our Western world on some level. And it was irrational, and I kind of say, "Hey, man, you're out of control here." But are we? Are we out of control? On the stage today, I appreciate the room. Thank you.
Actually, if he was speaking in British English, he would have told you to get onto the pavement, not onto the sidewalk. I didn't realize that, but the Brits call the sidewalk the pavement. You and I
was finally caught up with him.
Gary Baumgarten's room must have drained him of all his dopamine today.
He was claiming that America is going fascist. Dan, this conversation has been fast.
They can do for you.
One way we.
Well, the Substack today's Substack posting refers to our discussion today.
No, I can reach out to
as
him.
long as you stay on the topic. That's fine.
Which is good for him, or evil. What will benefit his life or endanger it? What goals he should pursue in the body of man and in the body's
Organism's life or
fundamental alternative in the universe, existence
Well, that
or
may be a
non-existence.
Thank you for that, Hulk.
I think if you cross post, you'll get the
Actually,
mark
it's
what
not
you deserve. With regard to the United Kingdom, I have.
What was the numbers over like the past 3 months?
Your speaker so far.
No,
The
it's
blame for this stabbing is
derived from conceptual knowledge. But conceptual knowledge cannot be acquired automatically. Man's actions and survival require the guidance of conceptual.
but the fundamental alternative of its existence remains this disease condition. But the fundamental alternative of its existence. So, no, after you know that I trusted you.
Countries, the rivers will run with blood. There will be blood all the streets of London. And all the telling the truth. He is saying, if you allow immigrants from Somalia, they will stab Jews. It's guaranteed. And as you can imagine, Gary, the polite people, the leftists, the educated people, the people at Oxford and Cambridge, they all say that's an evil thing to say. They never say it's not true. They just say it's evil. It's one of those truthful things that's considered evil in polite society. Not only is it considered evil in polite society, it's considered evil in polite society in Michigan. In fact, if you make that speech at the University of Michigan, you're likely to get beaten up because telling the truth about the immigration gets you banned from polite society in America. So shame on the voters of the United Kingdom because they let the Somalis in and they knew it was going to lead to stabbings, so the voters have blood all over them. And if anyone in this room is a British citizen and you want to rescue your country from a lot more stabbings, there's only one prime minister you could vote for, and his name is Rupert Lowe, and I'm done speaking, Gary.
Well, I don't know whether I feel comfortable attacking an entire group of people, whether they are Somalians or Jews. But it is true that the attacker, who was, I mean, there's no question of who it was. It's all captured on video. You can see it for yourself. Is a Somalian immigrant. Thank you, Hulk. Abby, you get the last word.
Oh boy, I really didn't want to have the last word here because I'm going to sound so redundant. And I hate having redundancy in your rooms and, sounding like I'm repeating over and over the mantra of what's going on. But it's definitely at an epidemic level. If we just talk about London itself, in those incidents that have happened, the community trust, which is the counterpart of what we do in the U.S. with SCN, it's actually who we fashioned SCN after. It's a very strong organization, and as you see in those videos, the Shomrim, the guards that they have, came to the rescue immediately in the stabbing incidents. And also, if you saw the videos of that, you saw two Israelis that were driving by and saw it and started screaming out of their car, and they were screaming in Hebrew and yelling, trying to get the people to notice there was a knife and what was happening. There is, the point why I'm saying this is there is definitely now a situational awareness that we have in our community, a real situational awareness. And also there's, Gary, I might have sent you the video, I don't know if I put it in the chat, of a situation where the police in England are there with pepper spray and, I forget what other tool they had, tasers, I guess, no guns. So they're actually running from the perpetrators because they don't have any guns to go and protect the citizens or themselves. And it's, people can argue that they like the British system of not having the weapons, but they're also not protecting the citizens as a result of it. So, where does it leave us? It leaves us having to arm up, having to be not just situationally aware, but trained. And everyone has to be trained in the schools and in the temples, also in the restaurants. They have to pack and make sure that they have enough protection if someone comes in on the attack. And it's primary now in our community. I just went to an annual luncheon that's normally someone talking about, raising kids or, different charitable needs in the community or programs that they're doing, humanitarian programs, and the entire lunch for these ladies that, the idea of carrying a gun or training is just so remote to them, was all about security and all about the training and all about having to arm up and worrying that their grandchildren are safe as they go to school. The whole tone has changed in our community and the paradigm has changed, and it's hard when I try to explain it to people that it is taken over, completely taken over the emphasis on what we're about. And there's so much in our faith and in our culture to learn and to give and to study. And we unfortunately have to focus primarily on this, as well as our finances are now primarily on this. I listened to what David said and what other people said, and what David's comments were very warming to me, and he has been in the past, and although we're different political points of view, as much as I have embraced and supported both financially and with a lot of time, things like Holocaust museums. I sat on my governor appointed me to the commission here in my state, the Holocaust Education Commission. I don't think it's the answer right now. I mean, unfortunately, our resources, as much as we have to educate and we have to teach that it can happen again, our resources have to go to the here and now and protection, and making sure there are hate crimes that are prosecuted, and that we take the time to meet with our district attorneys, our state attorney generals, our members of Congress, our state assemblymen, that these statutes are in place, that there's legislation, and that there's actual follow-through and prosecutions as a result of it. I think that what we can do is make that a pretty loud statement that it's not going to be tolerated and people are going to go to jail for it. And they're not being prosecuted throughout. I mean, in England, and there's just story after story, but also in the United States, we have cities where we have district attorneys that are just not, they're not following through, they're not prosecuting. And what we can do is, and this is not the infamous Israel lobby or the Jewish lobby, these are American Jewish citizens that have to go to our elected representatives and tell this story and say, please help and please ensure that the legislation is there, or the laws that are in place are actually enforced. I mean, I do as much as I can on that. Actually, tomorrow I'm supposed to go and testify at a hearing with respect to something with an education department in my state to make sure that the schools are safe and what they're doing to take affirmative action. I mean, silence by people is permission. And, when we need, Jewish schools needs guards, and students are hiding their Stars of David, and every parent and grandparent has to worry if it's safe to walk to synagogues, while, you listen and you see mobs chanting slogans that make us feel like we're being hunted down where we live, in places that we've called home for generations, and our parents and grandparents have fought to protect, and now we're at risk in those same cities. And in places like in England, when Jewish ambulances, places of worship are firebombed, that silence is not enough. And, I just ask, and I hear it in people like David, and I thank him, to stand with us and to help us, and that the solidarity means so much. And, call it out for what it is when you see it. And it shouldn't be, it's a stain. It's just a stain on our civilization. And it's cowardly not to call it out. And that's how I feel. And the last thing I wanted to say is, when I think about this with London, which is what the topic of your room is, the people that are perpetrating this or enabling it, or as the last speaker said, voting into office those that are just turning their backs on it, their own grandparents and maybe parents, fought a global war so that it could never happen again. I mean, they literally gave their lives so that this couldn't happen again, and the English lives, the British lives, to stop it, and it's literally happening again, and they're just doing nothing about it, and we're angry, and we shouldn't have to beg for support. We should feel that the concept and the solidarity and never again, and that's really a slogan that's got to be on people's lips. And that's just what I want to say. I mean, that you got to turn the anger into something productive. And for me personally, it's getting people trained, it's getting people armed, it's getting people situationally aware, it's target hardening our facilities, it's making sure we know who the enemies are, where the problems are. It's researching, it's being, it's just being on guard. And doing that is at a risk for a lot of us. We're mapped. They know who we are. They know where we live. We have to do extra protection for ourselves, but we have no choice. It's literally on our doorsteps, every day, multiple times a day, and that's the hard reality. And thanks for letting me talk.
Sure, and I guess my microphone, I'm walking around doing things in my house and my microphone was stuck on. I hope that didn't distract from what Abby had to say. Very important points. Abby, I just want to ask you very quickly. I see Lena, who we invited up earlier, finally made it up to the stage, so you're lucky you didn't have to be the last speaker. But I know you have been very critical of the Starmer administration, the prime ministership in the United Kingdom. And I'm just wondering, though, given the fact that they seem to suddenly be waking up, they're increasing the threat level. They're calling this, that administration is calling this an emergency, the attacks on Jews in the United Kingdom. Are you a little frustrated that they're doing this and we're not hearing this in the United States from our government official?
So first of all, they need to list the Muslim Brotherhood and the IRGC as terrorist organizations. I mean, there's a lot more that Starmer has to do, and I'm very critical of him. I am hearing it. Now, I don't want to get political. I swore this, and some other people did, but I am hearing a call to arms and a protection from some of the leadership in our government. I definitely hear it from senators. On the Republican side, I hear it on some moderate Democrats that have come out. If you listen to people in Congress, like Josh Gottheimer, I can list off members of Congress that have been very vocal about it. Some that I don't agree on their other policies, but strong on this. I'm definitely hearing it from our senators. We've been hearing it from Marco Rubio. From when he was in the Senate, he's been a champion of this and still fighting it very loudly, and we're hearing it from the president. People can start bitching and moaning everything, and your chat can go as it goes in all those directions of the Trump issues and the Trump syndromes. But he has come out to our community. First of all, he changed Title VI in his first administration to protect our community. And the biggest issue from our government in the United States right now, when I said it's primary, it's not funding the National Holocaust Museum. It's making sure the security grant money is there to protect these facilities. And the security grant money is not just for Jewish facilities, but they are for at-risk faith institutions and at-risk institutions in the United States. And that money comes from Congress, and Congress has appropriated it. There are problems with the program. There are problems with how you get the funding, and you have to put the money up front. And a lot of these institutions are poor, and they don't have $150,000 to put up front to pay for the systems that then ultimately it'll take them 2 years to get reimbursed. And they need to fix those programs and to make them user friendly. But there are people within our government that, Ted Cruz has been amazing and a real strong leader in the Senate on this. And there are people in the government, including Leo Terrell, who's, exceptional. But I think our president is aware of it, and he's communicated that, and he has been proactive on it. So obviously there's so much more that needs to be done because it's at an emergency level. But I am happy that it's this administration that's in now, I would be scared, much more scared, and probably having a different conversation if it was a Harris administration. So, and again, I didn't want to get political on this, but I'm answering your.
Thank you. We saw in New York City that the pressures can make people change. The idiot mayor, Mamdani, blocked protections that were put into place by the previous mayor, Adams, of religious institutions, houses of worship. And while it was motivated by attacks on Jewish houses of worship, as you point out, in the example that you used, it meant all houses of worship. And he blocked that, and he recanted. He allowed it ultimately because of the extreme pressure put upon him. But he felt that setting up a buffer zone so people can have ingress and egress to a synagogue or a mosque or a church infringed on New Yorkers' rights to protest. No, it did not. And it just meant a buffer zone so people could go in and out. You could still protest, scream, holler, use your megaphones, all you want, but you can't block people and intimidate them going in and out of a house of worship. Why do I say the idiot? Because a companion bill that would give related protections to schools has been vetoed by the same mayor. And hopefully he'll come under the same kinds of pressures that he came under when it came to the religious institutions. But this is what we need, is people need to be protected. You can accommodate both people's rights to protest and people's rights to not be accosted. You can accommodate them in our society, and to say that one has to be done to the exclusion of another is stupid. It just shows that you're too lazy to make that happen. Lena, you've got a minute and 30 seconds if you don't mind squeezing it in.
I'll be very quick, and thank you, Gary. This is very confusing. We're living in a globalized world, and information travels at the speed of light. And I am a baby boomer, so my parents, they were both in the resistance when Nazis occupied Greece, and I think those of you who know me know some of the stories. So I am, it's been drilled into me since I was a child that that we don't support anti-Semitism in any way. And of course, being the person that I am, I would never support anti-Semitism. But I think it becomes very complicated when we are chatting and talking and speaking without knowing who we have across from us. And a lot of times, what I find, the way we are talking can sometimes slide into anti-Semitism, which is totally absurd, but it does, and it can. And there's a lot of anti-Israel sentiment out there after Gaza, generationally speaking, okay? I just want to make that very clear that I have become aware of it, that a lot of people are anti the expansionist sort of project of Israel.
Right, but what the discussion today is not whether Israel's policies are good or bad. The question is whether, if one opposes Israel's policies, they might not, by the way, that's just an excuse, but let's just take it at face value, that if they hold to that position, that it's appropriate to attack Jewish people who have nothing to do with the decisions of the Israeli government. And so...
Absolutely not is the answer, Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Lena. I gotta go, unfortunately. Thank you. Folks, we're here Monday through Friday from 5 o'clock New York time, so until 5 o'clock New York time tomorrow for the next edition of the Critical Thinking Forum. Everybody be safe, be well, and peace out.
If you invest in the stock market, you can lose money.
What did you say?
I said, if you invest in the stock market, you could lose money sometimes.
Of course, I mean, that's quite, see, I mean, you're, right.
Mine is the head of the man, and my insight is keen as the hawk's. By my head I invoke I am the only begotten child of my father and mother. My father is dead. My mother
the hawks by my bed, I invoke thee. I am the only begotten child of my father and mother. My father is dead. My mother bore me with labor and pain and fear. By my body I invoke thee. About me shine the diamonds of radiance, white and pure. By their brightness I invoke thee. Mine is the red triangle, reverse the sign, given of none, save it be of thee, O Lord. By the Lamed I invoke thee. Mine is the garment of white, sewn with all the flashing of day that I wear. By my robe I invoke thee. Mine is the sign of Apophis and Typhoon. By the sign I invoke thee. Mine is the turban of white and gold, and mine the blue veil of the entire. By my crown I invoke thee. My fingers tremble on the beat of earth, so run I after thee in thy power of glory. By my fingers I invoke thee. Mine the wand of double power in the voice of the Master. Abracadabra. By the word I invoke thee. Mine are the double waves of music, the song that I made of all to invoke thee. Strike the master chord, draw the flaming sword, child and conquering Lord, always avenger. In thy hand is thy sword of revenge, and strike at thy cheek. By the sword I invoke thee. Voice of the five, the voice of the six, 11 are the voices. Abracadabra. Mine is the head of the man, and my insight is keen as the hawks. By my head I invoked it. I am the only begotten child of my father and mother. My father is dead. My mother bore me with labor and pain and fear. By my body I invoke thee. About me shine the diamonds of radiance, white and pure. By their brightness I invoke thee. Mine is the red triangle, reverse the sign, given of none. Save it be of thee, O Lord. the Lamb and I invoke thee. Free mine is the garment of white, sold with gold, the flashing of eye that I wear by my robe, I invoke thee. Give mine is the sign of a prophet and typhon, by the sign I invoke thee. For mine is the turban of white and gold, and mine the blue figure of the intimate hair, by my crown I invoke thee. My fingers travel on the beads of pearl, so run I after thee in thy car of glory. By my fingers I invoke thee. I hear the wand of double power in the voice of the master. Abraham, by the word I invoke thee. Be mine are the dark blue waves of music in the song that I made about to invoke thee. Strike the master chord, draw the flaming sword, child and conquering Lord, Horus, avenger, by the song I invoke thee. In my heart is my storm of revenge, let it strike at my being, by the sword I invoke thee. The voice of the fight, the voice of the six, 11 other voices, Abraham, Abraham. Mine is the head of the man, and my insight is keen as the heart. By my head I invoke thee. I am the only begotten child of my father and mother. My father is dead. My mother bore me with labor and pain and fear. By my body I invoke thee. Around me shine the diamonds of radiance, white and pure. By the brightness I invoke thee. Mine is the red triangle river, as the sign given of none. Save it be, oh be, oh Lord. By the Lamb and I invoke thee. Mine is the garment of white, sown with gold, and the flashing of eye that I wear. By my robe I invoke thee. Mine is the sign of a promise and typhon. By the sign I invoke thee. Mine is the turban of white and gold, and mine the blue figure at the intimate ear. By my crown I invoke thee. My fingers travel on labor and pain and fear by my body. I invoke thee about me. Shine the diamonds of radiance, white and pure by the brightness. I invoke thee. Mine is the red triangle reverse, the sign giving of non-savity of thee. Oh Lord, by the living. I invoke thee. Mine is the garment of white, so mine is the head of the man, and my insight is keen as the ox. By my head, I invoke thee. I am the only begotten child of my father and mother. My father is dead. My mother bore me with labor and pain and fear by my body. I invoke thee. About me shine the diamonds of radiance, white and pure. By their brightness, mine is the head of the six and bear the rose and cross of life and living the remaining in the sign. The invocation concludes. Therefore I say unto thee, come thou forth and dwell in me, so that every spirit, whether of the firmament, or of the ether, or of the earth, or under the earth, on dry land, or in the ether, of flowing air, or of rushing fire, and every spell and scourge of God, the vast one might be mine is the head of the hawk, I bear the rose and cross of life and love. bear the rose and cross of life and light. Abrahadabra, giving the sign at each abrahadabra. Remaining in the sign, the invocation concludes. Therefore I say unto thee, come thou forth and dwell in me, so that every spirit, whether of the firmament, or of the ether, or of the earth, or under the earth, on dry land or in the water, of whirling air or of rushing fire, and every spell and scourge of God, the vast one, might be mine is the head of the hawk, abrahadabra, and ends. 6, I bear the rose and cross of life and light, abrahadabra, giving the sign at each abrahadabra. Remaining in the sign, the invocation concludes. Therefore I say unto thee, come thou forth and dwell in me, so that every spirit, whether of the firmament, or of the ether, or of the earth, or under the earth, on dry land, or in the water, or the whirling air, or of rushing fire, and every spell and scourge of God, the vast one, might be abrahadabra. You came like dawn in my hands, soft but stronger than I knew. My fear turned gold in your eyes, and my old night broke in two. I was lost in the noise, now I'm learning how to stay close to your quiet light in the middle of the day. Stop thinking, let it fall. Take the deepest breath of them all. Hold it close. Don't run from the feeling. One more Came like dawn in my hands, soft but stronger than I knew. My fear turned gold in your eyes, and my old night broke in two. I was lost in the noise, now I'm learning how to stay close to your quiet light. In the middle of the day, stop thinking, let it fall. Take the deepest breath, hold them all. Hold it close, don't run from the feeling. One more second, you can start believing. Wisdom of God, now it's joy. Wisdom of God, now it's love. Wisdom of God, my heart is open. Wisdom of God, I rise above. Hold, hold, hold. Let it go, go, go. You are the answer I needed to know. Your touch is a steady rain on the dust of who I was. Every wound gets named, then it fades in the hush. I don't need 1,000 signs when your name is in my chest. One deep breath, one brave step, and the rest can be blessed. Stop thinking, let it fall. Take the deepest breath of them all. Hold it close, don't run from the feeling. One more second, you can start believing. Wisdom of God, now it's joy. Wisdom of God, now it's love. Wisdom of God, my heart is open. Wisdom of God, I rise above. Hold, hold, hold. Let it go, go, go. You are the answer I needed to know. If I tremble, stay near. If I break, pull me through. Teach my hands to release what I cannot hold with you. 10 not 9, 10 not 11. I breathe in your holy covenant. The storm in my head may sound like a poem. Wisdom of God, now it's joy. Wisdom of God, now it's love. Wisdom of God, my heart is open. Wisdom of God, I rise above. Hold, hold, hold. Let it go, go, go. You are the answer I needed to know. Wisdom of God, now it's love. Wisdom of God, I'm yours alone. That, or it's quieted down or minimized. I think that's really important because I think those threats are getting louder and they're seeping in societally as well as our borders and you know, I mean on all levels. The threats are there, and that would be a second. I don't know. I'd have to think about what my third would be on whether it's a domestic, what domestic issue stands out. Stopping the potential civil war between the left and the right, figuring out how to do that, finding a leader maybe. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could have, like, I don't know if it's ever even been thought about, where you have the president and the vice president from two different parties, like they did in Israel that time, and then they
and that, we did that for a little while in early in
country. The person, I think only in the first 3 electoral.
Adams was.
Adams and Jefferson. So basically,
Yes, that's true. I forgot about that.
it was the person that got the second most votes in the electoral college
Was the vice president.
became the vice president. And yeah, I mean, look, I don't think a lot of Jefferson. I think a lot of Adams. I think Adams was probably the best guy we've ever had politically at that level of the game. But he was a one-termer. I mean,
You forget that John McCain wanted Joe Lieberman, and the Republicans said no.
Was Lieberman already an
Yes, he
independent
was
by then?
independent by that time. Yes, he
Right.
was.
Do you know that this group that I did a documentary with a long time ago on Begin, I didn't invest in this, but they then did a second documentary on the life of Joe Lieberman. And while they were doing the documentary on him, this is just a side note, he died like before they were finished filming. So they had to kind of regroup and rewrite the whole second part of the documentary, but it's out. It came out. I mean, he is a remarkable man. But would you say that probably was the most contemporary reach over between the parties? I didn't even think about that one.
Yeah, he wanted to. McCain and Lieberman were very close friends. It's very interesting how very, very close friends you don't have anymore. You had Joe Biden and John McCain. Joe Biden and John McCain. They were like brothers. You had Bill Clinton with the Bush family. We don't have that anymore. You don't have Tip O'Neill with Reagan. You don't have that kind of thing. And you got rid of John Bonner.
But there are actually, so here's 2 members of Congress that I know, and it's weird. Remember when I went to the State of the Union, they sat together, even though they're different parties, like the parties are split in the room. Mike Lawler from New York and Josh Gottheimer are very close, and they've introduced bills together. Like their politics are very similar. And you see some of those alliances in Congress, kind of what you're talking about, but you're talking about more leaders like Boehner.
Yeah. Historically, it's not as far back as Jefferson and Adams, but there's one other time, but I think it is that because you mentioned Civil War. Lincoln's second term, I want to say, he was a Republican and Andrew Johnson was a Democrat.
I didn't realize that. Were their politics that different?
Yeah, I think again it was more unity because how fractured the country was. Even the parties were fractured. Lincoln winning the first time was almost an accident, right? Because he was way out in the woods and kind of wedged his way through the New York establishment.
How long was he in office for his second term before he was assassinated?
Not that long.
It was about a year, right? It was less than a year.
But the Republican Party was fairly new.
No, it was months. It was about 4 months. It was April of 1865.
Because the Republicans replaced the Whigs, right? The Whigs could have done
Yeah, Republican Party was fairly new. I don't think there was a lot of discernment as there is today. It only had started in the early 1850s.
Wait, I got a shout out to the Union League on that, Scott, because wasn't it all kind of started there and he came out?
Yeah. It was, the Union League was started to raise money for the Union, right, in the Civil War, yeah.
Sorry guys, that's a club in Philly.
Scott and I
had drinks at.
Yeah. It's interesting. You and I, I think about this with a lot of my Republican friends, right? When you and I sit and hang out, I don't think we actually disagree about that much, right? You and I could probably, if you and I were senators or something, we could probably cut a lot of deals, right? Because we both love the country and we both, we value similar things. We probably have different views on health care or the welfare state or something like that. But at the end of the day, I think you and I could split the difference. And why can't we build a culture that splits the difference anymore?
Interesting. Yeah, we really haven't disagreed. It's because I don't think everyone, I started out as a Democrat and moved to a Republican. I think people, I mean, people shift, but that doesn't take away some of your core beliefs. You know, and I've said this to people, and they don't believe me, but this is firsthand. When I sit in the RJC meetings, I'll sit at a board meeting, and there'll be like 40 people at the table, and I don't know if I could count on my hand any of the people sitting at the table that aren't pro-choice and pro-pot. You know, they all started out, they were liberal Democrats, and for whatever reasons, they became Republicans, but they started out from that position.
I think the answer to your question, Scott, is because as soon as you start running for public office, and I see this in California, they work their way up the system and they're getting money from the senior politicians of their party. So it's a simple matter. Yeah, maybe you would agree with Abby on all of these things, but then your campaigns cost money, and they put conditions on receiving that money from the party, from other candidates. So it's where, well, yeah, gee, I know you're really not big on abortion rights, but I'm using this as an example. You could pick any other one. I know you're kind of middle of the ground, but yeah, we'll give you $100,000 for your campaign. But yeah, you got to go in harder on abortion rights. None of this middle of the road, and so, you end up, if you want to be run for office and win, which winning is always nice, it comes with a price tag. And so you and Abby will suddenly find that, Abby will come, gee, why did you vote on that bill? Well, Abby, this, that, I had my reason, whatever. And then Abby ends up, choking you to death. And then it becomes a big, scandal, and, and then you can't have that. So that last part might have been made up.
Let's go to Universe. My man, John Kitover. John, I mean, you're an outlier, right? And you irritate most people on the app, but how would you heal the country? I mean, John, if you...
Well, if you look at my PTR, I'm reading Anne Rand's The Virtue of Selfishness. And if you show that to people, they say, oh, what a horrible title, Virtue of Selfishness. There's no virtues in selfishness. Well, it's a clickbait.
Are we going to talk about the Bill of Rights 2.0?
Hello?
Or was that just clickbait?
Hello?
Oh, yeah, Jakob, you're Oman. You can, you could take over the room if you want.
No, I'm not taking over the room. I thought it was an interesting concept. To be honest, I've always been thinking about Talmud 2.0, like if rabbis got together again and sort of like talked about it. So like, it's a really intriguing idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think on some level, right? I mean, part of the Bill of Rights, I think affordability is the issue, right? I mean, I think that's the thing that the parties, and they're both fumbling it, right? I mean, we don't know how to do this, right? Like basically, most Americans that are functional can't afford to live in the country, and it's awful, and I think that's that would be 2.0, right? That would be how can we get to affordability? And I think the left would say that you do it through taxation and redistribution. The right would say you do it through deregulation and lower taxes and prosperity. And I don't know that either party has been successful in making life affordable for most Americans.
How do you come back from 9% inflation under Biden? That's what I'd like to know. Because we're still reeling from the effects of that.
Yeah, I think what Biden did was he made a strategic decision that we could say was a fail. I think he was facing a recession on his watch. So what he did was it's so great, the inflation, the Anti-Inflation Act or whatever.
Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah, what he did is he drove up prices, right? I mean, he put $1 trillion into the economy, and I'm not an economist, I don't know anything about economics, but I do know if you have more money chasing the same amounts of goods, the prices go up. So he inflated prices. So, but I think it probably did stave off the recession. It might have not been the right decision politically, right? I mean, just pragmatically. I mean, I think probably a more disciplined president would have just let the economy go where it went.
I'm curious where Greece is now, because Greece was having a lot of problems, and I haven't kept up on it, and I don't, but they had hyperinflation, I believe, or bad inflation, and the idea, look, if you spend too much money, you have to stop spending money. That's not a difficult concept to understand. It might be difficult, hold on a sec, thank you. It might be difficult to sell politically, and we've seen time again, like in France and in other countries, where politicians try to propose austerity budgets, and people just lose it. And you'll see protests, things like that. But, I mean, the idea that you spent too much in the last year, so this year you have to spend less so you can get back on track, is that a difficult concept for people to understand? And why wasn't that being sold?
No, but this goes back, I think, Alan, to an Indigo Girl song. The hardest to learn is the least complicated. It's not complicated, it's just a hard lesson to learn. I don't think,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, Abby could speak to this, right? Because she is, the dean of conservative politics here. But even Ronald Reagan, right, was not a fiscal conservative, right? I mean, he was
claimed to be one, but his actions were otherwise.
Yeah, he cut taxes and increased spending. I mean, no, he did try to sort of pare down the government, and he was Doge. But
There were more employees after he left than before he left, before he entered, so.
He tripled the national debt.
Why do we revere him? Why do we revere him so much? What do you think it is?
It's his persona, it was his
I want to say one more thing. When he took office, the United States was the largest creditor nation on the planet. When he left office, it was the largest debtor nation on the planet. All in one administration.
To answer Abby's question, we revere him, I think, because we had clear and present danger in the Soviet Union. And he, for all of Reagan's faults, he saw that there was a good guy and a bad guy. And that's part of what spent us into our debt, right? I mean, it was deficit spending on the Cold War. But, and we won it. I mean, so I think that's why we revere him, because
I think you're right. I think that's one thing, but I think there's a lot more. He was a very good communicator, and he brought the country together after a decade that was very difficult and full of malaise and whatnot, and brought hope, and people bought into that messaging.
When it comes to Reagan, I think people forget how politics work and our Congress works. What I remember is that Reagan proposed all these cuts, and I forget the name of the budget guy he hired, who was just slashing government programs.
Stockton.
David Stockton.
No, David Stockman, yeah.
Stockton.
Stockton.
Thank
No, Stockman. I think.
Stockton.
Yeah.
Oh, was it Stockton?
I've heard the name Stockman 17 times now. We've got his
Okay, we know what you're talking about.
in any event.
Because Stockton's a basketball player.
Yeah, in any event, in order for Reagan to do what he did, he had to make a deal with Congress, which was Democrat controlled. So Reagan drove up military spending, and the Democrats said, "You're going to do that? You're going to spend more money on the military. We're going to spend more money on the stuff we want to spend money on." So that was the deal. So together, they drove up the budget. And that's how Reagan got what he wanted, and that's how the Democrats.
Don't you think? I think when we've done well fiscally, we get a Democratic president and a Republican Congress, because the Republicans, when there's a Democratic president, they don't spend money. When there's a Republican president, they spend money. When there's a Democrat president and a Democratic Congress, they spend money. What's a unique combination in our modern politics is when you get a Democratic president and a Republican Congress, the whole system becomes fiscally conservative.
I would, first of all, I don't want to be on record as agreeing to that, even though I might. That's number one. Number two, I'll give it the caveat where that used to be true. Up until, say, I don't know, 15 years ago, I couldn't put a date on it, but I think that used to be true when Democrats still believed in meritocracy and those kinds of principles to a certain degree. I think now that they're pushing the different narrative, I don't know that we can count on that.
Because you're going to have executive. I'm sorry. No, may I say something about Reagan from both sides? Looking at him from both sides. Bearing in mind, Reagan had been a Democrat when he was governor. And he became a Republican because his wife, her stepfather, said, I can bring you Bloomingdale's, I can bring you all these people, I can get you in. And that's why he became a Republican. By the way, my parents, who were Democrats, became Reagan Democrats. They weren't happy afterwards, but they were Reagan Democrats. They did vote for him. My issue about Reagan is that two things. Most people have never gone back and looked at the McCarthy era, and he blackballed. He's somebody who blackballed people who died, people who lost their careers, people, he labeled them as communists, and it was a horrible thing that he did. And and then when he became president, he said he would never blackball anybody, and he denied ever having blackballed people. So I didn't like him for that. I didn't like trickle-down economics, and the person who came up with trickle-down economics swore afterwards, don't ever do it. He said never again. He said it was bad. Reagan, he was a great...
And Mayor Bush, they legislated this, right? I mean, Bush called it voodoo economics, right? I mean...
Yeah, it was...
A serious conservative guy, and he lost the argument.
Yeah, as Meryl said, even the proponents of it later admitted that it didn't work, and it doesn't make any sense.
But that's what this administration is proposing without saying it. They're not saying it, but that's what it becomes. From the top, if you get anything, it trickles down. And you're not really going to get anything. The one thing I did like about Reagan, I believe he was very good friends with Tip O'Neill. I like the idea when you can have, which we'll never have again, not now anyways, when you have somebody who says, here's the person I want to pick as a nominee for the Supreme Court. And, when Bork didn't work out, they sat down. The Republicans and the Democrats sat down and they put a list together and said, who could we confirm? And we don't have that anymore.
Yeah, but that wasn't Tip O'Neill, Merrill, because Tip was Congress, right?
Tip.
Who was running the Senate then? when he was,
Tip was Speaker of the House.
Tip was in the Congress. So when you're talking about who,
He was very close friends with Reagan and had that kind of influence.
They did have drinks. They did have drinks.
yeah, no, I know. I was just curious who was the Republican in the Senate
Was it Kennedy?
that would have done the deals
Oh,
with,
you mean the majority leader?
Bork and, no, what
Yeah.
she's talking about with
Well, Bork scared
proclamations.
everybody. Bork scared everybody.
Oh, I know, but
Realistically, he scared everybody.
I was just trying to remember who.
Here, I'll look it up.
Joe
I
Biden.
can't remember.
Joe Biden was there then.
Yeah, but he wasn't a leader.
He wasn't a
Kennedy
leader,
was
but
the Dem leader, right? Or no?
No, to Merrill's
No.
point, yes.
No.
To your point, yes, they were much more cooperative with each other. Absolutely. But to
And we
say,
lost that.
yeah. And that started with, geez, I'm blanking on his name. But
Mitt Romney,
no,
Ted Cruz, and
No,
Mitt
Harry Reid was an asshole, and he's my senator,
Mitt
so.
Romney, yeah, but Ted
It's,
Cruz made Mitt Romney lose the presidential race.
the agreement with America, Jesus Christ. And
There, I have the names.
yeah, but
That was Gingras, the contract with
yeah,
America.
Newt Gingrich, thank you very much. Yeah, but to say Bork didn't work out, Kennedy and the Democrats said, this guy is not gonna go past. We are not gonna vote for him, and we are going to assassinate his character. And Bork answered the questions honestly, which you will never get again from a Supreme Court nominee, because they know the other side, whoever nominates them, the other side will assassinate their character, as we have seen time again. And
I don't
that's
think it's-
why Mitch McConnell said, okay, I'm not gonna forget this.
The Senate Majority Leader were Howard Baker, 81 to 85, Bob Dole, 85 to 87.
Yeah, so when I look at the budget of the Reagan administration and the federal outlays as a share of GDP, you see that the total outlays dropped slightly. Revenues dropped from 19% to 17%. Defense went up from 5% to 5.5%. Non-defense discretionary outlays fell from 4.8% down to 3.3%. So it was a pretty radical cut in non-defense spending and a very big increase in defense spending. But the real killer, of course, was the drop in revenues.
But Euro, that defense spending, so if I were to put like on the yellow tablet and draw the line down the middle, the pros and cons on Reagan, I mean, and I'm a little older than some of you, so I lived through, as a kid, you know, I don't know how many of you had to go under your desk and do the drills and the fear of the Cold War, but we
I've seen the YouTube videos.
Okay, so I mean, we all had that. So I guess for me, the strength or the real thing from Reagan was that strength abroad, and it kind of took away that fear of the Russians. I mean, we had a fear of them. We had a fear, not the Russians, sorry, the Soviets. We had a fear. They were our real enemy. I mean, you know, although we had Vietnam, I mean, in terms of actual fighting and some smaller, you know, smaller battles along the way. I mean, the Soviet fear was what we grew up with, and for me, he took that away. Like he cured that.
Yes.
So that's on my pro side of
He
it.
also removed the Malays after Vietnam through Carter and the bungled Iranian rescue operation. America was fearful of using its armed forces. He put short-range ballistic missiles in Germany to combat the Russians. He made major spending programs, and I think he turned the perception that, yeah, it's okay to use military force.
Well, that's the point. So extending Euro's talking about, like, for a lot of the heads of Americans, they justified it because he took away that threat of that enemy. I mean, I'm not articulating it well, but that's...
No, I think you're articulating it just fine, and I think I agree with you. I don't have a particular problem with the defense spending. I mean, it's a little high, but I think to some extent it was justified. And you know, he did have this little squabble. What was it in Grenada and stuff like that?
That lasted 10 days.
I mean, you do realize
That was during him, right? Grenada was during him.
During stuff.
when Reagan was president, we paid annually what we now pay monthly in interest expense. Annually. Now we pay it monthly.
Yeah, so the big problem with Reagan, I don't think, was the defense spending. I really think it's more to do with the drop in revenues, like I said, which was significant. And like I said, the United States went from the largest creditor nation on the planet to the largest debtor nation on the planet. And I think that culture is bad.
I've researched this, and I think his tax policies did increase revenue.
Well,
basically, when you deregulate,
not as much as the economy grew. So that's why I said as a percentage of GDP it dropped. So it went from 19% down to 17%. So it's a pretty significant drop, which is one of the reasons.
I mean, part of that is we did cut spending, right? I mean,
the debt went up. This is what I'm saying. Like, you don't want debt to go, like, it's not like a small difference in debt. He tripled the debt. So it's significant.
There's something I don't understand though. Merrill, you said that he started out as a Democrat, and
yes.
I'm having a fleeting memory of him being at the Republican convention and not getting the nomination. And he was
76. Yeah,
okay, he was viewed as an extreme right wing. Like, he was extreme right. So it's weird that he started out as a Dem because he was perceived, compared to the other R's at that time, as like far right.
No, that's actually incorrect, Abby. That's totally incorrect, Abby. Abby, that's totally wrong.
No, Abby has. He was a Barry Goldwater disciple, and Goldwater. I mean, it's interesting because Cheney was, in that administration, and I remember listening to
What role?
Cheney was defense secretary. And they were basically, Cheney basically said, Cheney was an old school traditional Republican, and somebody, one of these supply side guys came in and said to Cheney, like, let me explain to you supply side economics. And it was the same thing that Bush said. It was voodoo economic. He's like, what we're going to do is we're going to lower taxes, and we're going to do all this, and it's all going to work out. We're going to increase military spending and lower taxes. And Cheney thought it was insane, but he went along with it. So yeah, I mean, Reagan kind of came in, I think. And look, Reagan was a Bill Clinton type.
But when
So Andy, to answer your question, it was 1962.
Oh, so
Yeah.
it was really old time.
Yeah, but the thing is, he was 51.
Maybe they were considered extremists in a way, but they were not what we would consider far right. I mean, they were, if anything, kind of to the left of the, I guess you would call them now like paleocons, like Richard Nixon and so forth.
He was considered far right by the Republicans at the time in 1970.
I mean, Buchanan was the really far right.
That's what I'm saying. Like he's
frightening.
He was
really frightening.
Pat Buchanan was more the old school Republicans, similar. I guess you could say more similar to Nixon than Goldwater.
No,
he was not old school Republican. Old school Republicans are more centrist, just like old school Democrats are more centrist.
Kind of like the Rockefeller Republicans. Yeah. No. The thing is, so like I was saying, he switched in 1962 when he was 51, but he had already made an ideological shift in the 50s. So he was still a Democrat in name, but he was increasingly once he took his position with General Electric, he started, promoting more like Republican ideas all the time.
But when was he shifting from Democrat to Republican? When did that happen?
Officially, party registration 62. Ideologically in the 50s. from about 1954. He started.
Yeah, he was a Goldwater disciple.
Because he was.
I didn't know that. I didn't think of that. I thought about that it was his father-in-law who convinced him to become a Republican.
No, he was a Barry Goldwater guy, and he knew Barry Goldwater personally.
He was a TV host on General Electric Theater.
On General Electric, I remember
that.
Yeah,
And then he started promoting GE publicly, and as part of that, he started shifting his explanation about American prosperity, and he would visit GE plants across the country and give speeches.
So
there were some other things about him that I found a little bit. His wife was a little bit troubling. He had to be, and once he was shot, every single trip he took was predicted. She used an astrologer.
Yeah.
She was so terrified, so she used an astrologer. So all of his movements and everything was determined by an astrologist.
That's true love, Meryl. We should all be so lucky to have love like that in our lives.
I read the love letters that he wrote her. Listen, this is the one thing, though, that we all condemned Joe Biden, saying, that he was not completely alert, let's say, at the end of his presidency. Neither was Ronald Reagan. He already was
absolutely was not.
With Alzheimer's. And he fell asleep at the Russian summit. And he was caught sleeping at the Russian summit. But he was already in the stages of early Alzheimer's.
But he had a vice president that was, and Bush Sr. that was absolutely unbelievable. Probably the best person we've ever had in the White House.
Most qualified.
Now let's talk about Bush Sr. Bush Sr. was not a conservative. Bush he was for the Equal Rights Amendment. He and Barbara were very, very, I'm not going to say they were Democrats, they weren't, but they were very liberal in some of their policies of how they thought.
Who would you say they were like today in the Republican Party?
Meryl, none of them are conservative nowadays. They all want big government for different reasons. No, the only real conservatives are.
What happened to Nick? What's the answer to my question? Who would be that today?
Would be the George Bush Sr.?
Yeah, as you're describing Bush Sr. and his politics, who's there now?
Once Reagan got the nomination and asked him to be vice president, he clicked overnight. He became immediately was the conservative, and then when he no longer was president, went back to being more liberal in certain policies.
Even Reagan, he spoke conservative ideology, but he was often very pragmatic in terms of what he actually did.
Well, I see it for me now, and you might not like this, but all the Republicans that run right now, when you look at people that are running and you look at people that are in Congress, one of the things that I'm not going to say almost all of them, but many of them, they have to say that the election was stolen. They still do that.
No, they don't all say that. I know so many that don't say that.
Abby, listen carefully to what I said. I didn't say all of them. Many of them still do. You just had he just testified before Congress for confirmation. He wouldn't say that Biden won the election. Everybody, they're all about the death of Trump. Nobody wants to be primaried by Trump. And when you look at all of the Republicans that are running, including people you might endorse, Abby, they all say they are Trump, they're conservatives and their politics are more like Trump. They seem to want to say that because I don't believe it, but I believe I believe some of them are just bursting, wanting to bash him, but they're not going to because they want to win.
But I can only think of a handful.
Pardon?
I can only think of a handful that would have said the election was stolen, and that tended to be some of the bigger loudmouths some of them aren't even in Congress anymore.
I agree.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example.
Yeah, they're not the voice voice of the Republican Party, Merrill. I hear what you're saying, but I go and I listen to these speeches, and they come to our conferences. I haven't heard one of them. Like, okay, we have a lot of them that present to us that have just talked about the election being stolen. Like, not of them, like the main ones in Senate, like Tom Cotton or Cruz doesn't say it. I mean, go through like the bigger personalities in the Senate. You don't hear anything from Graham. They're not saying the election's stolen. Like the outliers, Pepe's right. The Marjorie Taylor Greens, you know, and or the Matt Gaetz, and they're not there anymore. Like I'm trying to think of who still says it, but you really don't hear it anymore. Thank God. By the way, thank God that you don't hear it. You know,
So
that would be horrible.
I can tell you some.
Are you going to say that they are not Trump supporters? Are you going to say that they?
No, I didn't say it. I don't think that one has to do with the other. They don't say it.
Yeah, so I'm with Abby here. I think politics is artful, right? And I think we're getting to a place, especially as Trump is on the back, where you can now say you're for Trump. And I think Trump has discarded this narrative, right? Because he's just bored, and I think he's a second term lame duck president, and I think he's, which most presidents in their second term turn to the world because domestically they can't do business with anybody. And so he's running around doing things like Venezuela and Iran. No, I'm with Abby on this. I think people are discarding this narrative because
You're talking about the voter. You're not talking about the people in Congress.
No, I'm talking about go through the list of Mitch McConnell is not saying it, okay? And I mean, how long was he in power? You know, running it. Thune is not saying it. Who's majority leader? I mean, I'm not hearing it from Marsha Blackburn. I mean, I go through the list of them.
You talked about somebody, was it in South Carolina or North Carolina, a Republican who was a candidate. He had been, I believe, the head of the Republican Party, and you actually put in chat that you support. You thought he would be great. He was an election denier.
I mean, I have
about that.
Right, but Meryl, as you pointed out, a lot of them say that not necessarily because they believe that, but because they're concerned about pressure that would be put on them. That would be primary against. Yeah, well,
a lot of them are running. A lot of people who are running have taken that off their websites. They used to have it on their websites.
Oh, I like Watley. I think he's a really smart guy. I think he did an amazing job with the RNC. He's a good, facilitator. I liked him. I mean, I don't remember if that was his mantra. It's definitely hasn't been his mantra. Now the party is what, Laura Trump and
I think that's father wants because Trump.
Right, but I'm not praising Laura Trump. I'm just talking about Michael Watley. I mean, I thought he was a very strong leader of the RNC. Where was Ronna McDaniels on it? I don't remember her position when she was running the RNC.
We actually mocked them. I think Republicans especially, of course, I think they would try their best not to publicly do it, but most Republicans kind of laughed at people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, the people that were really big into pushing the election was stolen and that kind of stuff. I mean, these people were kind of loony ideologues.
But you have to remember, her constituents voted for her. So it is, when it's practical for some of them, they say it. When they don't think it's practical, they remove it off of their website.
Okay, so let's
go about abortion.
But Meryl, look at who are the power or really up and coming senators. I forgot about this one, who's like one of my most favorite, because it's in his first term, is Dave McCormick, who's the new senator in Pennsylvania. He is not an election denier. I've never heard him say that. He's also has a fabulous future within the party, and represents a state that's kind of a purple state. And take a look at Dave McCormick. The views are, I don't know if you would consider them extreme. I think he's a mainstream Republican.
All right,
have not heard it from him. So I'll throw that name out.
Let's talk about it this way. All right, every single person that Trump appointed in his administration every single one would not say that Joe Biden won the election. They would not say it. The most they would say was, well, he's our president. That's all he was our president.
Has Rubio said that?
Hold on, please let me finish.
Okay.
Rubio, you know what I think I know you love Rubio. I want to tell you something. I wanted Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. I thought, here is the voice of somebody with experience and someone who's going to stand up to Trump. He's not going to be the sponge. He's not going to fold like everybody else is doing. And I think that Marco Rubio, the best thing that he can do by the end of this administration is remove himself, get further away from Trump and not do Trump's bidding for him, because he is smarter.
I agree.
He's the only one that I really wanted to see. And when I look at but every single one of the Republicans confirmed every single one of the people that had absolutely no right being in that administration. They had no qualifications. They're terrible. And I know the question was asked about what would be the 3 things that you would do. The first thing I would do would be, of course, I'd get rid of all of them. I would put experienced, well-qualified people in there. And when you talked about the fighting terrorism, the DOJ got rid of that, and the FBI got rid of that. They don't do that anymore, the terrorist investigations. I bring that back.
So, Abby, I was going to try to take a stab at answering your question about who in the Republican Party today would be most similar to George H.W. Bush. So my initial reaction was nobody, because he had quite extensive experience. Because before becoming president, he was a congressman, he was a UN ambassador, he was the chair of the Republican National Committee, he was the envoy to China, CIA director, and of course vice president. But in terms of overall establishment temperament, I would probably say Mitt Romney comes very close. He is, of course, retired now from the Senate.
Experience does he, besides business? He's
business oriented, political family institution. He was an internationalist, and he's uncomfortable with populism. If you want to talk about in terms of who has a similar moderate, pragmatic New England style Republican, you got Susan Collins and Phil Scott. A bipartisan governor type, you got Larry Hogan. You got Nikki Haley, of course, as an internationalist Republican, and Chris Sununu.
When you say internationalist, what exactly are you referring to?
Internationalists?
Like internationalist.
Globalist. Globalist.
Well, I would call it a globalist.
Sununu is interesting because Sununu and Hogan both came out against Trump with Chris Christie. They all joined that anti-Trump bandwagon. And it's sad that Hogan lost that election. Although people love the present governor, and he went for Senate in Maryland, but he was like from the Chris Christie camp of, I don't know, what would you call them? What Merrill was describing as these.
Which ones? Like Sununu, I would say.
Republicans?
I would say, yeah, Sununu is like a New England Republican.
Yeah, they're from the Northeast. The Northeast, I feel like they can only churn out one type of Republican. And
it's a type of Republican, yeah.
I guess there's a lot of Lindsey Graham fucking Republican and
he's a fucking fruitcake.
Yeah, what was the last guy that talked about? What was that?
Lindsey Graham's kind of a tricky one because he's all.
No. Who's the
Chris Christie?
Man, you guys don't like Chris Christie, do you?
I want to say something about Chris Christie.
Oh my God.
So besides a Springsteen fan, but we'll leave that aside. I've said this in rooms, and you can fact check me on this. The hardest job for a governor, the hardest gubernatorial position in our country is the state of New Jersey, to be a governor there.
Yeah, makes sense.
The amount of responsibility and what falls under the purview of the governor's office is greater than any other state. And if you look at it, he has to appoint judges. I mean, he has stuff that other governors don't have to do. And if you talk to people in New Jersey's a funny place because it's a blue state and they elected him. And he was a popular governor, you know, in terms of his policies, etc. I mean, so, you know, and he came out totally against, first of all, he was with Trump. He prepped him for the debate in the first round, but he came out completely, you know, against Trump. Yet, I don't think you can take away.
Abby, don't you think?
Scott, he was popular. Forget the Bridgegate stuff. I mean, he was a popular governor there.
Abby, don't you think Chris Christie's popularity, right, was he actually was a conservative? Like Trump's not a conservative. Trump is a bombastic. Yeah, I mean,
He's definitely not a conservative. Yeah.
Chris Christie is a conservative, right? I mean, he's and conservatives evolve. I mean, this is part of the thing. Like when you look at a guy like Chris Christie, part of his conservatism is evolution, right? I mean, he's look. Whenever I see Chris Christie on the media, he's the most sensible person speaking, and he's center right. I mean, he's and I say this as someone that's not a conservative, right? But I mean, I think we could use probably more Chris Christie conservatives in the country to balance me out.
Okay, go to the 17 people that were up when Trump ran the first time. Do you remember all the 17 candidates?
John Kasich,
Okay, so Kasich, right, Jeb Bush. All right, so what were your thoughts about
Jeb Bush they thought was going to win?
Absolutely, a lot of money was behind him. So what were your thoughts on Kasich and on Bush?
All right, I personally, okay, remember I said yesterday, I don't know if you were in the show yesterday, I am a Democrat. However, I always look at Republicans who are running and remind myself, which ones do I think would be good? If they win, can I live with that? Are they going to be good for our country? I might not agree with all their policies. However, I can still look at a Republican and say, I can live with this. And Jeb Bush was one. And I know everybody thought he was a warmonger, but I thought Jeb Bush was the smartest of all the Bushes. So I liked Jeb Bush. John Kasich, I liked him. I did not like a lot of his policies, but I did like John Kasich.
What about Vivek?
By the way, Mitt Romney, I will tell you that I know many Republicans who would not vote for Mitt Romney because if he had been allowed to run for president as Mitt Romney, the governor, they would have, everybody, even I would have considered him. It was when he was told he had to, they were marketing him as too far to the right for people who were used to him being governor. And that was the problem. That was the problem. And but I think that, and then he came back. And then he came back and became who he really was.
And then who else was in that group, man?
You also have Vivek Ramaswamy.
Paradise Now.
17 I'm talking about. Who?
Yeah, I know all of them.
Rick Santorum.
Oh, right, I forgot about him. Okay. He was to the right.
You had Walker Santorum.
Walker. Wait, Walker. Do you remember Wisconsin?
Governor of Wisconsin. Yeah.
Scott Walker. Yes.
Yeah, Rick
Popular.
Santorum.
Wait. Hold on Scott Walker. Popular governor, right?
Yeah.
There were some issues that later.
By the way, Santorum, it came out, he won Iowa that year. I mean, it was, when they sorted out all the votes, Santorum won Iowa. I was a Santorum fan, actually.
Well, do you want to know why Trump won? Why some really good Republicans didn't win? That's the
Because he's better than
the
them.
media. No, the media. He's so
You gotta give him some credit because
he had 20% name recognition, right?
they were covering all of everything he said and did. And getting all the other rallies. We weren't getting that.
But Trump had to face a three-man field. Let's say it was Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz, and that was the field. Trump would not have won that election, right? I mean, he was able.
Yeah.
with
He
20%
ran
name
against Ted
recognition.
Cruz, don't you remember? Who was?
Did Scott? It came. Meryl's right. It came down to the three. It was because I remember it was there was 18,000 of us at that policy conference, and it was three people presented, and it was Cruz, Trump, and Kasich. Those were the three that were left. Do you remember? It kind of came down to those three.
And they couldn't have been more different.
They were so different.
But I think if Trump had to start that race with three people in the field, like a normal Republican field, the reason Trump won, I mean, I remember, one of those debates where he was like, Kasich says something simple, right? And Trump pulls out a scrumpled piece of paper and says, you know what? The reason I'm like in the middle of the stage at